everyone, thanks for watching the JBRS YouTube channel. Today we've got some watercolor, but specifically we're going to do some metallic watercolor. Now you can use the metallic watercolor just on its own, or you can activate it and put it on top of watercolor. It can be mixed with all sorts of different things. It can be a nice wash just put on top. Anyway, really cool. We're going to see how that goes. I'm going to apply some masking tape to my paper just to give myself a nice clean border and help keep it sort of stuck down. I've got two sheets here. There we go. Starting at one edge, keeping this side slightly elevated, and applying pressure so it smooths out the paper. There we go. No bumps, no creases. If there's a bit of a bump here on your tape, water could get under there and ruin your beautiful border. Okay, so setting it on. Trying to keep my space fairly consistent. You can kind of see through the tape. Now you can get green painter's tape. It's a pretty low tack. I prefer the blue colored one myself. That has a little bit stronger tack to it, but not enough it's going to tear the paper like a regular sort of tan masking tape. Alright, so I'm making sure the entire paper's flat. Oh, I've got something stuck to the bottom here. There we go. Piece of glue from Puppets. If we were doing traditional watercolor with watercolor paper that is a rag paper, which is actually made out of cotton, what we would do is tape our paper down or glue the edges of it down to a board, super saturate the paper, and then take a heat gun and dry it, and that would shrink the paper, but since the glue is holding it, it would actually sort of shrink into this nice tight one, and it becomes really absorbent. It just sucks up the water, and that's sort of what you want in a really good watercolor paper. The paper that we're using is more sort of recreational, we'll say. It's a fun paper. It has a little bit of tooth. It's nice and absorbent. It should be great for the little sort of fun sketches we're going to do today. Okay. Now, a lot of people look at their paper, their white sheet, and they don't know what to make. Make anything. That's it. Just make something. Okay? If you're looking for quick starts, hey, things that you know. Everyday foods, right? You can quickly draw a little banana. Okay? Things that you know and have every day can be a great place to start. Alright? Cute little banana. We come over here, we're going to do a flower. So if I start with just a little circle and then do some M's or W's over and over again, well, I give myself a little daisy. From here, I just put a little stem on it, a little leaf. We can just fill this with all sorts of little cartoon characters, doodles. Think of this as sort of our practice sheet. We'll go more pictorial on the next picture. But for now, anything that you can think of, even rainbows. Do a couple of little rainbows. Rainbows are a good way to test out your colors, see what they've got. If you've got a rainbow, oh, you gotta have some clouds with some rain. Furthermore, you're gonna need a sun. I'd have mine peeking outside the rainbow. There we go. Okay, working with watercolor, sometimes it's best to work in different places or to work with, say, one color. Here I'm going to grab my tiny little brush. Now I don't have to have expensive brushes for these. This is a synthetic blend. I grab just a little bit of water. Now to activate our color, let's just jump right into the metallics and see what that looks like. I know some people watching this video may only have the metallics, and some people will have a full range of colors. So with the metallics, I find they need to be massaged just that little extra more than they would regular colors, especially if you want a real rich metallic kind of color. The metallic colors can be a little bit thin sometimes if you're not stirring them and getting them to come up really well. Now they're not going to look all that metallic when they're wet. When you'll really notice them be metallic is when they're dry. Right now the sort of glossiness of the wet watercolor sort of dilutes the effect of the metallic. Now these can be mixed and blended just like any other watercolor. I'm going to show you through the video a variety of different ways that we can apply them together. So because of the transparent nature of watercolor, we can add metallic colors to already existing ones quite easily. And because they are watercolors, you can go back and add second layers, you can blend and mix and such. So I'm going to wash my brush a little bit. I'm actually grabbing sort of more color. In a sec, we're going to grab a bit of this orange. Let me just pull that into view a bit better. There we go. There's my colors. Here's the tools I'll be using. So a blob or two of water, activate the metallic color, and then you can go and put them in nicely. A lot of beginners in watercolor will often go through and cover up everything they've already done. And that's not really the point. We've put in this lighter color, and now we've gone to this orange, but I've only sort of half colored the yellow. Next, I add a bit of water, I go into my red, and I only half color the orange. Now we want to be very careful not to scrub with our paintbrush, or we'll end up ruining our paintbrushes. If I go slowly, you can see I sort of massage back and forth. I'm not pushing straight on and sort of scrubbing it like it was a floor with a mop. I really just want to wave my brush around back and forth until the color's sort of gently massaged. There we go. So I put on just this little hint of the metallic red. Now again, this is going to show up a lot more metallic when it's dry. Furthermore, it's going to show up more metallic not in the camera. You'll notice how nice they are when you're done. Changing the way you look at it with the light, you just sort of tilt the side to side your view, and you'll see the metallic come right up. Okay, so something else that we're going to sort of tinker around with is if we already have some watercolor and we want to go and sort of accent it. So the same deal, we grab our water, we massage our color a bit, we grab the yellow, so I need more water already. You're constantly adding water, especially if you want to get some great fades or gradients. So I put in the yellow that I've got, and now I'm just going to grab a bit of water and I'm going to pull that yellow out. So it now fades from a brighter yellow to a lighter yellow out on the edge. And when I go back to sort of bright yellow, I'm actually going to go with more of an orangey yellow this time. There we go. And I'm going to do my sun rays in this brighter orange. And they stand out better because they end up hitting this lighter yellow. You can always go back and brighten this area up with a second coat of the other yellow. There we go. That looks quite nice. Now letting those areas dry for a little bit before I start putting on more applications of paint is a good idea. However, right here in the sun I want to try and capture it while it's still a bit wet so I can blend it a bit more. Colors blend better when they're wet. The color has more chance to sort of bleed out and mix with the color that was previously there. If I were to put red, however, in this part of the rainbow, it would mix in with my orange. The colors would bleed together and make a terrible mess. So I actually have to wait a bit for that to dry. I would move on to something else that's not connected to that. Maybe I move back to my flower. And a watercolor artist is constantly sort of jumping all over their work. That's why often they work chromatically. That means by using every color in order. So they would do like their lightest colors first is a good way to go. They would do their yellows, then move on to their oranges, their reds, and so on and so forth. There we go. That looks pretty cute. Now when everything is dry, inking pens. So we want to make sure it says, there's a lot of great brands for this. You want to make sure though it says archival. You want to make sure it says things like acid-free, permanent, okay? Waterproof when dry. Those are the kind of keywords that you want in a really good pen. There's several out there that can wash off, and if you add watercolor to them, they'll end up bleeding out into the rest of your work and make a terrible mess. So make sure you look for a pen that has those keywords. Now, as long as everything is dry, I can go back and sort of ink in my details at the end. They come in different sizes. I'm using a 0.3 at the moment. 0.3 is a little fine. This one's been used before. There we go. To remind myself to get brand new ones for demo day. Cool. Do another one here, but it's a 5. It's a little bit larger. At least you'll get to see what it looks like, but it's a little on the thick side. Now it could be reacting funny because my watercolor, it might still be a touch wet. These don't like working on wet surfaces. Cool, but we've got a YouTube video to do. There we go. Same with the idea of sort of the banana. Now you could certainly draw out your image and then ink it. So we can do something like that. So let's just do, a little fun house. I think that's a good idea. I'm just sort of sketching out a little simple perspective here. Maybe something a little more, I don't know, barn-esque, I guess. Just a little shack. Cool. Now, in this case here, what if my sun is shining on the house? I could totally do nice metallic on one side, so a nice sort of bright yellow, where it's catching most of the sun, and then use, say, cooler colors, like blue for the shadowed side. So again, it takes a little longer to activate these colors. There we go. Great. Another thing that we can do is mix our true colors, our watercolors. Let's say, does that come into view? No. I'm just going to flip this over so you can see the other side of my palette. So the other side here, I've only grabbed a bit of ultramarine blue, plopped it into there, and now grabbing a different blue. You can mess around with some of your colors, mix it up, and now I've got sort of another blue that's a little bit richer in color. So that is the identical blue that I used on the bottom part of the house, but mixed with a little bit of ultramarine. So I can still see a flash of metallic in there, but the color is, well, that little bit different. There we go. It's a fun little spot on the shadowed side of the building. And I'm going to try the same technique here with the roof. I'm going to grab a bit of yellow metallic and a little more yellow natural watercolor. Just going to go with a little more orangey color. Works best if the colors are slightly different. And I'm just going to do the edge of the roof here. There we go. Now that side's getting a lot more sun than that side. Worked quite nicely. Again, you can sort of play around with these sort of things. You can also, now that my sun is dry, I can grab the yellow metallic and lay it on top. And because the metallics sometimes aren't quite as rich as the colors that you buy in your regular watercolor, they do lay on top of other watercolors quite nicely, and they sort of give it a nice glisten when you look on either side of it. Highly recommend you can do that. However, I've showed you that you can use just the metallics and still come out with a beautiful piece. Cool. Well, we're having fun playing with this one, but let's go. I'm going to do a faster video, or I'll speed up the video for a landscape one, and we'll see how that goes. we are. I'm going to sketch out a lighthouse. I am working from a picture. It's just sort of off camera. My quick little sketch doesn't need to be perfect. It's my watercolor that needs to be perfect. I'm just kidding. It doesn't it doesn't need to be perfect at all. Watercolor is very forgiving in that sense. It's hard to fix things, so you have to be a little forgiving too. Now, normally I'd start with all the light stuff, light yellows and oranges and reds and things like that. But here I wanted the tree defined, and when I put my blue wash for the sky on top of it, it's not going to hurt the tree at all. It's actually going to help it, making sure it dries and I don't sort of overwork it. It'll be great. So here I wanted to show you a bit more of the color schemes that I'm using, but I'm only using the metallic paints. Now the metallic sheen doesn't necessarily show through on the camera, but as a finished piece it really looks nice. I've layered in my light green. I've marked in just where I want to put the rocks. In watercolors, since we work in stages, usually the unfinished product is what we're not happy with. So working on it more, building up in your layers, continuing to work sort of darker, more rich colors will start to show up your piece more. You can see where the blue sky washed over the tree, it sort of washed it or diluted it out. And then I put a second layer of sort of the dark brown on top of it. And here I put on a second layer of blue, and the more layers you start to apply, as long as you're leaving a little bit of the color behind from your original color, you should be okay. You can see where I've put in the details of the grass. The grass sort of fades out a little bit as it dries, and then I go back and put in a couple of more layers, and this helps me with color variety to give it more shadow, a little bit more depth, and it starts to make this stand out more. I saw that the sky wasn't letting the building stand out as much as it was, so I had to go back and darken around the sides. A lot of time I apply the color, and then when the whole area is wet, to get a nicer blend, I'll smooth it out with a bit of water and just try and even out the area, not to overwork it, to make sure my brush stays wet. And there you go. The piece is finished. Yay! Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Alright, I hope you enjoy. See you on the next video.